Hey, this is Walk and Talk 107, April 28th, 64 degrees. Have you noticed lately how selfish people are? How narcissistic? How people tend to be more concerned about themselves than other people? There's a couple of verses in the Bible that give you encouragement. This is titled Useless or Inspiring. Have you considered, is your life useful? Is your life build other people up? It's obvious when you study what the Bible says. Again and again, it comes back to taking the first step. So if you're feeling useless, if you're feeling like you don't really care for people, if you want to inspire people, if you want to encourage people, if you want to be a positive, not a negative, if you want to be in the encouraging side of life, consider a couple of verses. James chapter 2, verses 14, 15, 16, and 17. Just two verses. If you want to smile big, understand a couple of verses and let it change your life. You don't have to be discouraged. You don't have to frown. You don't have to have a negative attitude. You don't have to consume. You don't have to be on the take. The Bible says this, James chapter 2, verse 14. What use is it? Or what's the benefit? What use is it? My brothers and sisters. So the Bible is talking about people who believe in the Bible, people who believe in Jesus. What use is it, Christians, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works? Well, let me repeat that. If someone says he has faith, but he has no works. So get that little phrase, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works. In other words, have you noticed if someone says, hey, look at me? Have you noticed that there's a lot of people talking? And then the verse goes on and says, but he has no works. A lot of people talking, but not doing. If someone says he has faith, but he's not helping. So there's an interesting juxtaposition of the idea, I believe in the Bible. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the better way of life, that is following Jesus. I have faith in Jesus. But the statement is, but you're not a helper. You're not a worker. You don't have any action. You sit around basically and talk. Have you noticed how easy it is to gripe? So if someone says he has faith, but he has no works, that's the question mark. So that the text is saying there are people that says, hey, I'm a Christian. And the writer, James, is saying, but where's the proof? Where's the benefit? You say you have faith, but show me. Let me reread this one verse again. What use is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works. Isn't that interesting? It's the sayer, the person who talks, the person who says, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God. But that's all he does, is talk. Talk. And in the context here, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to work. I don't want to serve. So the talking is basically, hey, pay attention to me. The person who says they have faith is really into a social club. People who say they have faith but no works, they're not lending a helping hand, they're just griping. They're griping. When we take and look at each of these little concepts, take care, Bob, it's obvious there's basically some Christians, they have faith, but they don't want to do anything. And then there are some Christians who have faith and they want to work. They want to serve. James is talking to people who believe in God, who believe in the Bible, who want to make a difference. But apparently in James's church, in James's circle of friendship, there are Christians who say, hey, I have faith, I believe in God, but they are do-nothing Christians. So the question is, are you useless or inspiring? As a Christian, are you doing? Are you walking the talk? Lots of people get caught up in me. This is what I want. This is what I think. But they're not working. The Bible says, work out your salvation in fear and trembling. The Bible says, help one another. The Bible says, encourage one another. The Bible says, give each other a word of hope. In James chapter 2, verse 14, the next little phrase is interesting. Can the faith that doesn't work, can that faith save him? James is just gently trying to show people that it's one thing to believe in Jesus. You can believe in Jesus and be forgiven. God saves, we don't. That's all throughout the book of James. In the book of Ephesians, for by grace you've been saved by faith. So you can be saved. You don't have to work to get saved. You don't have to work to become a Christian. Your faith in Jesus, no works. It's all by grace. But now that you're a Christian, James is talking to Christians who say they believe. He's talking to Christians, so they've got salvation. He's saying, come on, put your salvation, put your faith to work. Have you noticed how easy it is to look around all of the problems in your family, in your neighborhood, in America? Have you noticed in all the problems in your church, how easy it is to isolate, how easy it is not to serve, not to get out and work? James is calling out Christians who gripe, who say, hey, I'm a believer, but there's no helping others. There's no serving others. I find it a challenge when someone shares with me that they believe and they do very little in helping other people. Very little. So let me just challenge you. Do you spend a lot of your time every day encouraging others, inspiring others, helping others? Do you spend a lot of your time saying, how can I pray for you? And then you actually get on your knees or stand and spend time praying for that specific person? Are you really helping others? Or are you just a talker? Sad to say, more and more you look around and Jesus would say to us, if you love me, keep my commandments. Love one another, help one another, encourage one another. In other words, don't be useless by just talking about Jesus, talking about, yes, I'm forgiven. You're not supposed to be just a talker. You're supposed to be a worker. Friends, listen, talking rarely inspires. The inspiration is authenticity. When you see Jesus sacrificing, when you see Jesus actually forgiving, when you see Jesus feeding the 5,000, when you see Jesus actually coming along that bedside and praying for healing, when you see Jesus working, it's a different ball game. Talking is one thing. Telling is one thing. But when you see someone wash feet, when you see Jesus on his knees washing the feet of his followers who are going to betray him in the next 24 hours, who will abandon him, what use is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone says he has faith, but he has no works? Can that faith save him? And then James gives us an illustration that is very challenging in verse 15. If a brother or sister is without clothing and in need of daily food. Now stop. If a brother or sister, another Christian, is without clothing and in need of daily food, do you know someone who is hurting another brother or sister? Do you know someone who just, they're poor? Or do you know someone who's poor in discouragement? Do you know someone who is filled with anxiety? You know someone who needs your helping hand? And the answer is yes, you do. But what are you doing about it? Not pick up the phone and call somebody, but what are you doing? See, are you working to help your brother or sister who doesn't have any clothes or doesn't have any daily food, the bare necessities of life? And it's not just about poverty here. Are you helping people, Christians, other brothers and sisters that are hurting in one way or another? I mean, really big problems. Are you finding yourself every week engaged, every week involved, every day concerned about a brother or a sister who has major problems? You know anybody who's homebound? You know anybody who's in hospice? You know anybody that's in the hospital? You know anyone who just lost a job? You know anyone who got a bunch of children, kids. You know anyone who has just gone through some major marriage crises? You know anyone that has a prodigal child? You know anybody who's discouraged? You know anybody who's angry? You know anybody? See, listen, what James is getting to, if a brother or sister is without clothing and in need of daily food, you know anybody who's in a mess? See, a lot of us don't want to get messy, right? A lot of us want to live our lives really like in a museum. We want everything to be clean. We want everything to be spotless. We want everything to be sanitized. We really don't want to get our hands dirty. If you want to inspire people, you have to step toward the mess, or you're going to be useless. You have to get your hands dirty. Verse 16 says, and one of you says to that person who has a need of clothing or a need of daily food, go in peace, get warmed, be filled, and yet you do not give them what is necessary for their body. What use is that? You say you believe in Jesus, you say you're a Christian, but you won't help a brother or sister. Now, I mean, this is Christians helping Christians here. You won't help a brother or sister that you know who needs help. What good is your faith? Is your faith in Jesus? Yes, you're born again. Yes, you're saved. But what about working? What about serving? What about helping? What about washing the feet of one another? How's your sacrifice in meeting the needs of people called Christians who are broken? Or what is your capacity to meet the needs of non-Christians who are broken? See, it's easy to be useless. It's easy for us not to be productive, not to be caring. It's easy. Just don't do anything. Talk about it, but don't do anything. Oh, just go be warmed. Go be filled. Peace. I'll pray for you, but you don't really pray. It's just talk. Verse 17 says, in the same way, faith also, if it has no works, is dead, being by itself. Friends, there's lots of people, all talk, no visible action. All talk, no meeting the needs on a regular basis of people, believers, other people, non-believers who are around me. It's too messy. I don't want to go there. It's going to be difficult. It's going to cost me something. I've got this movie to go to. I got this TV show to watch. I've got this Netflix to watch. I gotta sleep. I gotta save up my money. I don't really want to help. Friends, faith, if it has no works, what use is that faith? James is not debating that if you have faith in Jesus, you are born again. If you have faith, he's saying, yes, you are. But he's saying there are Christians who believe in Jesus sincerely, but there's no action. There's no walking the talk. What's the benefit of your faith in Jesus if you don't go help one another? What's the profit to you? Is it useful if you have faith in Jesus, but you don't use your faith to love one another, to help one another, to encourage one another. See, Christianity is not about narcissism. Jesus is not about selfishness. Jesus is all about extending your hand, taking the step toward the mess, and offering help. And you work, you roll up your sleeves, you get your hands dirty, and you work. And you work. And yes, it's dysfunctional, and yes, it's anxiety filled for you. And yes, it costs you something financially. But that's what Jesus did. Jesus took the initiative, sent by his Father, acts sacrificially, gives up heaven, comes to earth, and knows that he's headed for the cross, and willingly, for the joy set before him, he's crucified. He's crucified. Why? To meet your need, to atone, to forgive. We live in a culture, it's about me. We live in a culture, it's not about helping others who are hurting. It's, I am hurting, I want my needs met, I'm not gonna break a sweat, I'm not gonna get involved. Remember the word sacrifice? In our church, I asked the staff yesterday, how did Jesus treat his people? How did Jesus treat the disciples? How did Jesus treat the people that believed in him? And the staff basically summarized the word sacrifice. If you love one another, keep my commandments. No greater love than this, than to lay down your life for one another. That's Jesus, laying down his life. He didn't gripe. He didn't whine. He didn't isolate. He got messy. Your life can be useless when it comes to helping, loving, engaging other people. Or you can be inspiring. You can inspire by putting your faith in Jesus in action. Why sit back and not get involved? Why not get engaged? Why not inspire? Inspire people that you know around you and extend your circle. Make it bigger and bigger. Why not help people and get messy? Because that's what Jesus did. He left heaven. There was no problems in heaven, and comes to earth. And he just experiences one problem after another problem, trying to help people find a better way. Let me make a couple of observations. Notice in these verses that the challenge that James is saying is believers helping believers. Believers helping believers who are struggling. Notice number 2, you got to take the first step. You have to initiate. Proactive. If you sit back and wait, James is simply saying your faith is dead, meaning no life, meaning no action. Oh, you could be and might be, and probably you're born again and you're going to go to heaven, but there's no blessings coming from you. See, if God has blessed you, and he has, he's forgiven you, he's going to take you to heaven, you should be every day looking for ways to bless others. Be a blessing. Be an inspiration. Let me give you another suggestion. It's going to cost you something. Sacrifice. Helping people can be expensive. It's going to cost you. Why not help people and pay the price? Why not? Jesus paid the price. He carries you all the way to heaven with his life. You can. Sure you can. Another suggestion. I would suggest when you help people, it's probably you need to be very careful to help other people with someone helping you. I would suggest be careful not to do it alone. Jesus sent out his disciples in pairs, two. So there's something about two people throughout the Bible. So find someone who will help you help others. Don't do it alone. It's probably going to be too messy. If you don't have someone who will help you, I would just encourage you, give me a call. You can call our church. I'm more than happy to partner and strategize how to help others. Let me give you another suggestion. In these verses, remember, what use is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone says he has faith but he has no works? And then he says in verse 17, in the same way, faith also, if it has no works, is dead, being by itself. These verses are not saying you can lose your salvation. These verses are not saying you have to work to get into heaven. These verses are not saying that faith plus works gets you into heaven. These verses are clear. James is talking to brothers and sisters. He's talking to Christians who are saved, but they're sitting on the couch. They're do-nothing Christians. And he's challenging them, don't be useless. Inspire. Don't be useless. Inspire people. These verses are also, they're not saying you can lose your salvation. Not saying you can lose your salvation. These verses are just simply saying you are believers. So, because you're believers, is your believing turning to action? It's not believe and act so you get saved. It's believe and help others because you are saved. The concept here that James is, he's talking to a church of Christians, and some Christians in that church have basically become apathetic. They have basically become complacent. They are in a mindset of do nothing, and James is challenging them. Help one another. Encourage one another. Inspire each other. You're believers. That's what Jesus did for you. Jesus gives you hope. Turn around and be, if need be, a Jesus freak. Turn around and, if need be an active follower. Be an active doer. Don't just sit on your faith. Put your faith into action. This is Walk and Talk 107, April 28th. It's a beautiful 64, 65, 67 degrees. Useless or inspiring? Don't make your life about you. Love takes the initiative, acts sacrificially to meet the needs of others. We invite you this coming Sunday. We have worship services in our church, First Baptist Church Tempe, and 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11 in the worship center, and 11 o'clock in the upper room. We have a 6 p.m. as well. Engage, help one another. Have an inspiring day. Get messy. Blessings.